What happened is for a lot of years, I lived in this strange tension, right? I would read this here, and then I would read that there, and all of a sudden they conflicted, and it was wrong. So what is it, right?
Welcome to Walk Like a Hebrew, the podcast for followers of Yeshua, also known as Jesus, who have discovered the Hebraic roots of the faith and embraced the constitution of the kingdom of God. We know this constitution as the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, where the laws that govern the citizens of God's kingdom are found. On this podcast, we talk to fellow believers about how and why they came to this particular walk and how it's affected their lives. I'm your host, Jody Odell, and my guests today are Vincent and Gloria Estes of Central California. I met Vincent and Gloria at Sukkot in Orosi, California, and our interview takes place in the middle of the camp with a lot of activity. There's a worship service, shofars, kids running by, and a busy road. All these may be heard in the background. But this couple is so vivacious and funny and full of life. Just their presence in my sukkah gave me hope and joy and wonder in this precious season. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. We talk about Vincent's past life that included a rough life and a few prison terms. We talk about Gloria's tumultuous first marriage, the miracle of finding each other and being the parents of 8 kids, finding fellowship and accountability, and they also tell me the story of how they met, which is full of hilarity and Yahweh's direction. Walk Like a Hebrew is entirely listener-supported. Please consider donating by visiting sheholdsforth.com/donate or by subscribing to podhero.com, where $5.99 a month can help support all of your favorite podcasters. And I'm happy to announce Walk Like a Hebrew is now a part of the Faithcasts community. Visit faithcasts.com to discover great Christian podcasts like this one to help you keep the faith. Welcome to Walk Like a Hebrew. It's Sukkot time. I'm here at Orosi at Safe Haven Sustainable Farms with Gloria and Vincent Estes. Welcome, guys. How are you doing tonight?
We're well.
Great,
Thank
Jody.
you.
Thanks
Good.
for having us.
So, is this your first time here at the Sukkot?
No.
Oh, okay.
This will be our 4th year.
Okay.
Our first couple of years were only for a couple of days. We missed last year because I had a motorcycle accident, and so I had used all of my vacation and sick time, everything.
Cool. Well, last year was my first year here, so that's why.
That's a really
I didn't see you here.
No.
Yeah, that's why.
And of course, it only counts when I'm here, right?
Well, it's hard to miss our family. Everyone remembers us.
Mostly the redhead.
Yeah. Well, for the listeners, these two both have
Ginger.
8 children.
Ginger.
Yes.
Ginger. You have 8 children.
And we have
8
8 children, but
And
only one's a redhead.
Only one. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It fascinates us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, okay. So tell me about yourselves.
Well, it's always an interesting question, right? Tell me about myself. I did not start in this world as a believer. I did not have any kind of religious background. And try to tell people, right? The word says, train your child up in the way that they shall go. And that's exactly what I did. I went the way I was trained. And so that meant a lot of the world. Drugs, women, bars, you name it. I lived hard. I played hard. That was sort of my motto. That caught up with me. And I spent a lot of time in county jails. I think, best of my account, is 15 county jails in 6 different states.
Wow.
And 3 prison terms here in California. It was during my 2nd prison term that I came to know I had this encounter with Jesus. And that was the year 2000. Which was pretty amazing. I had this moment. I was reading the Bible. I was in isolation because I didn't play well with others. So I'm reading the Bible, and it just made sense. I mean, I had gone to Sunday school a couple of times as a child, but no recollection of that, right? And so, but I'm reading this, and it just makes perfect sense to me. Unfortunately, I say what happened is I got out, and I ran into the Christians. No disrespect to anybody, right? But
I do understand. Yeah, I worked in a church that did a lot of prison ministry and halfway, transitional stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so,
I can see that.
Yeah, and so I had all these questions about Sabbath and stuff, and no answers, no forthcoming answers. I mean, not legitimate answers, right? There was all of this bending and twisting of the word to where we were free from what was considered delightful and wonderful and everything else. As you read in the Psalms, right? I delight in your law, but I'm free from that, and so I had this mentality at that time that these men that I were talking to were all learned men. Right, PhDs in theologies, and all this stuff had been to seminary.
Sorry.
And so I must have missed something. That's I came to that conclusion that I must have missed something, and I didn't quite understand. And so, unfortunately, what happened is for a lot of years, I lived in this strange tension, right? I would read this here, and then I would read that there, and all of a sudden they conflicted, and it was wrong. And so, what is it, right?
Right.
I was working one day, and this gentleman that I had done some counseling work with mentioned to me 119 Ministries, and I was like, "Sounds interesting. Maybe I'll check them out." Right? And I think I mentioned it to my wife. I don't remember, but then the next job that I had gone to, there was one of my coworkers who brought it back up, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember. I had another guy tell me about that. I think we should probably check that out." And she goes, "Yeah, you should check out their teaching about the Sabbath. It's pretty cool." I said, "Okay." And so a couple months. Maybe, before I sat down one morning, I get up early in the morning, I sat down one morning and I started watching that, and it gives me chills now, I just lit up, I was just on, I was like, oh my God, and I grabbed my wife and I said, and she's like, what is going on? I said, you have to watch this, I knew it, you have to watch this, and she sat down and she watched it with me, we watched it again, and she was just dumbfounded, she was like, how did we not know?
Exactly.
Yeah. How did we not know?
When did that get in there?
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't there when I read it before.
That was added.
Yeah, clearly. And so, and we started from there. And then, of course, the next things to fall were Easter and Christmas, and we had this very strange. We were living in Bakersfield at the time, and so we went on this search, right? Because it was like almost immediately. We continued. The church that we had gotten married in, we stayed there for a little bit.
For a few months.
Yeah, for another few months. We would honor Sabbath, and then we would go Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah, and
it's pretty common.
And so until one day there was just what we believed to be just this egregious. It was like, we're done.
Yes.
We're done.
Yeah.
And so
That's
we got
common
up.
Too.
Yeah, we got up and we walked out
In the middle of the service and never went back.
Went back. Yeah.
Yep.
And so that started our search for Sabbath
keeping church.
Right.
Now, how long ago was this?
This 5 years ago. Yeah.
So 2015.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right after we got married. We got married in March, and it was a couple months after that when we saw the teaching on the Sabbath.
It was all right around there. So we did. Yeah. We started looking for any church that met on the Saturday. We didn't care what it was.
Right.
If it met on Saturday, it must be okay. So we found the scariest church on earth. It was called the Church of God.
Yes, yeah.
And they wore pantyhose.
So, and then we found another church.
Okay.
And it started out okay, but it was, for me, it was more like a Sunday church on Saturday. And so it was like, there were little things, because I know we came in right around the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and it was like middle way through it, and I walked in and there were cookies. There were cookies on the thing.
Yes,
I was like, how does that work? Why do we have? And you could tell they were not. These were fat cookies.
Yeah. The fat cookies.
Yeah. And so I was like, how does that work? And so we went a few more weeks after that. I think one of the things that because they have the early morning Sabbath school, and we were sitting there one morning, and they got into translations of the Bible, and the pastor said, King James, absolute King James, and I stood up and I said, knowing that it has bad translations in it. I mean, it says Easter, not, and he was King James. I was like, okay, and no, that was just it. I mean, that was just his authority, his final. That's what we're going to do. And so a couple little things like that, and we're like,
yeah.
So then, Seventh-day Adventist was running around in the back of my head a couple of times, but I was like, from the Christian church,
right?
They're pagan,
right?
They're cults.
They're cults.
They're
yes,
cults,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So don't even. So I decided to look them up, and I was like, I don't know, Mama. I think we may need to go check them out.
And by this time, we were so desperate for anybody at all.
Yeah, some fellowship. Exactly.
We didn't mind, honoring the Sabbath at home, but we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to do it, and So we don't buy anything, we don't go anywhere, so we watch teachings and fall asleep.
And again, it was one of those things where a pastor and his wife were, and everybody, just very nice. A couple of different families invited us over for lunch after service, in the first month or so, and great time. And then Christmas rolled around, and all of a sudden there were Christmas trees in the thing, and it was
like, give your children presents, and we said, no, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Because by then it was our first or second Christmas.
I think that was our second.
And we knew enough by then, just listening to 119 and finding other teachings. We just couldn't do it. But it was a good experience. That church was.
Yeah, it still was, yeah.
They didn't teach a great deal from Ellen G. White.
Okay.
And they answered every single question we had. And they made us think about a lot of things.
They did, yeah.
Like, life after death and, what happens to us then and what does keeping the Sabbath look like. And it was good. Yes, I felt like it was a good experience. But once Christmas, we were like, okay, then we can't do that. That's still mixing. So we went back on our own for another 5 or 6 months.
It was a while, yeah.
It was after Passover because he wears his seats to work, and there are several other believers in the county that saw and asked about them. It took finding the third one before they would invite us, because it turns out they all knew each other. They all fellowshiped together, but they'd had some bad experiences around Passover time where people would want to join just for the Passover experience.
Yes.
So they did not know if we were,
like, were we legit? Or, did we have any street cred, or were we just,
Generally, if you were in tzitzit, you're legit.
Right?
And they had been hurt, so they...
Well,
so they took... They had all been hurt, but one of them was like, you should just come. Yeah. And we were like, wherever and whenever. We don't even know your last name. Do we need to know? I don't think we need to know their last name. Let's just ask for their address. Yeah. And then we were so pleased to walk into the Saparities.
Community, yes.
And
the Silvas
and it was a small community, maybe 15 or 20, and we met with them for a couple of years. And it grew and shrunk and grew and shrunk. And our daughter married their son a couple of years ago. So they have been married for 2 years, and that's about how long we have been fellowshipping away from the Saparities. They are a group, and then several of us decided it was time for a little more in depth than we had at the point. Although they were following, the Torah, and we learned a lot from them too. And there was a good variety of people, and so we have met with a smaller group for the past 2.5 years.
Smaller groups they lend themselves well to very deep.
And we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Learning. Yes.
And our group is 5 or 6 families. And we have seen people come and grow even in our little group. Yeah. But they're very committed and very devoted to one another and very open to anyone that wants to know. And so that often means people will come once and never, ever, ever look you in the eye
because
again.
We're weird.
A little bit,
We're even intense for other Torah believers is what we have found. Our particular...
Like you two personally or your group?
Our group in general.
And us personally.
Same
a little bit of us personally.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
A couple of years ago, we asked the bigger group when we were at 40 or so, we would like to be held accountable. If you see sin in our lives, please call us out. 2 other families said us too, but that was it. And so we were like, maybe there needs to be a little deeper study going. And so the 4 families went and just started meeting smaller, and then we felt called to have a location because it's hard when you move every month for a new location to a new house to invite people. And our heart is very much inviting. It is what we do with strangers on the street. It is what we do with work. He is a counselor, and anyone that is in need is welcome at our house. And we just felt like we needed to be with people that felt that way, because not everyone feels that way. With hurts that even happen in the Torah family, there's some standoffishness sometimes, and in our world, we can't afford that.
Right.
Everyone needs to hear. Whether you have ears to hear or not, we want to share it. So we wanted a location. He just felt like the Lord was saying, we need a location that people will know where we are. And,
Right.
and we are there every week. And our first meeting was 52 people. We were like,
Wow.
wow. I mean, we were crying.
It was, yeah.
And it was a huge blessing. We had rented a large room from a Sunday church. I can't remember the name of it. But they gave us a price we could afford. And we thought it might just be the two of us with our children.
Yeah.
And so we said, okay, if no one ever comes, it'll be available to anyone off of the street. And it's kind of the middle of downtown where lots of people off the street come.
That is cool.
And we could afford it by ourselves if nobody helped.
Right.
And so we were so excited to see 52 people. That lasted 1 week. Within 3 weeks, it was 4 of us plus our kids. There's been a lot of changes, and all of them not necessarily good, but grew us to where we are today. And now we meet back in a home because our second location, the person we rented from is not able to maintain the building anymore.
Right.
And we're like, well, that's okay. So we're back in a home, but still growing, which is a really sweet blessing.
That's cool.
Because we have the blessing of each of us in our family. We are 3 kids still at home, 5 are grown. Each of us are believers. We're the only ones like that. So in our little congregation of about 20, 15 to 20, it's, one is a believer, the other is not.
Yeah.
One, her children don't believe, but she does. So no one necessarily has the freedom that we do to just please anyone.
Right.
Anyone is welcome. We don't have any fears with people off the street. Right. We have no compunction against having people we don't know. Just call us off the 119 Fellowship Finder. Yeah. We will give you our name, address, and just
Come on, come check it out. Yeah.
May or may not be wise, but sure, come over. Just come on over.
That's okay.
We believe in the protection of the Father in all situations. Not that we test it. We just believe that that's what His Word says.
Good.
Right? We are faithful to Him, and He is faithful to us. I like what my wife said. That's sort of our model behind it. It's not, we know not everybody has ears to hear. Right. But we call them anyway. Right.
Good.
Many are called, few are chosen. Right.
That's awesome.
So they come. And some come, some stay, some for a little bit, some come and run.
Some hope for technical difficulties, so they have it out.
Yeah, we've had a few of those. In fact, we've had people that came years ago to our fellowship and were just completely scared away, and then come back later and said, all those things that you talked about stuck. They stuck in there, and they fermented for a little while, and they grew and became something different, and it was a recognizable truth. So I'm dying to know, how did you two meet?
I went to yummy.com, and there he was.
Not quite, but no. I used to work for Salvation Army, and one of the guys that I counseled, actually, he went on to do his thing, right?
Stay sober.
And it stayed sober, and that, and
get a job, get a life.
Yeah, get a job, get a life, the whole 9 yards. And I was actually sitting at my little apartment one night, and he called me and he said, "Hey, are you still single?" I was like,
"Why do you?
Why do you want to know?" Very, very nice gentleman, but it's like I'm not sure that I really want to meet somebody.
That you would recommend.
Yeah, it's just trying to be nice, but it's like,
because I felt the exact same way when he said, "There's someone I think you should meet," and I'm like, "Is he like you?"
Right. So at the time,
which is okay, but a little scary. I'm not sure that I trust your.
So, but I asked him, I'm like, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I know this person." She goes, "He sounds just like you. Every other word out of him is Jesus." And he goes,
he said the same exact thing to me. All he ever talks about is Jesus.
So he goes,
right on. Already. He just got better looking. I don't even know his name.
So we think you guys probably get along real well. And I'm like, because the funny thing about it was I had just started dating. Well, I wasn't even really. I had met this other lady, and we were at my house watching a movie.
Oh, she was there.
Yes, having a pizza.
As he was answering
yes, as I was answering the phone.
To hear about her.
Yes,
got it.
And I was sitting at my house with Paul.
Oh.
which looked a lot like a date, but it was not. But, and so it was a little.
So it was a little strange, but I was like, he goes, well, she's on my Facebook, so she's expecting a friend request if you want, you kind of thing, right? You can go look her up, blah, blah, blah. So that all got done, and I went onto my Facebook and looked up Gloria, and I saw this picture, and I was like,
yes, please.
Yes, yeah. Well, there might have been some other words, but it was yes, please. I would like to meet this woman. And so that started a Facebook
friendship
firestorm.
Explosion.
Oh my gosh, right? I mean, so I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of earning my bachelor's degree from Summit Bible College, and I turned my final paper, which was due at midnight, got turned in at 11:59 because we were always so busy on Facebook. I hardly slept. I mean, just all those things.
It was. We would talk.
It was a whirlwind.
Like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was a single mom.
I think even Facebook was
then.
like, "Hey, you guys got to tone it down, man. We can't handle this many messages."
Text messages in 2 weeks. Surprised we kept our jobs. I'm not sure.
I don't know how we did that. Yeah.
And I was a single mom back then. I had been married for 19 years to an unbeliever and just a bad situation. But I was raised exactly the opposite. I was raised in church with Christian believing family. I did not have any rough spot. There was never a rebellion in me. And turns out there was lots of biblical reasons that would have given me reasons for divorce. Yeah. And so I had been single for several years when I heard about Vincent from that friend, and I remember thinking, I also looked up his thumbnail picture.
So funny.
And
I'm a short, fat Hispanic man.
Yes, that is what I assumed with a name like Estes. I thought, and that's similar to the guy who introduced us. So I just had this mental image, and I saw the tiny thumbnail, and I was like, well, he's not Mexican, but it's only this big, so I don't know how tall he is. So I immediately went and looked up his record because I was a single mom, and I had been in an ugly relationship for a very long time. I do not take dating lightly. I was content as a single woman. It was rough, but we lived independently, me and the kids. I was able to continue to homeschool with them and worked 60 hours a week, so there wasn't much free time. But I took jobs that I could take them with me or work from home, and so and he just provided. He just was, he became, in those 3 years of singleness, the perfect husband, the perfect father, and the perfect provider, which I had always looked for in my husband. Mm-hmm. And he could not provide that because he's not perfect. And when he had introduced me to him, I was very leery. And then I saw his record.
I look really bad on paper.
It does. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. But by then we had been talking for weeks, and we only lived a couple of miles from each other. But we chose not to meet one another until we got to know each other a bit more.
That's wise.
And it was a wise choice, and I got to know him very well, and I was very much smitten with him well before I ever saw his face. And when I walked in, met him for the first time, I was like, oh, wow. He is not short, round, or Hispanic. He is a hunk of burning love. And he is...
I'm leaving that in.
Yeah, he is,
I'm leaving that in.
I'm telling you, the yummiest man I have ever laid eyes on. I just thank him every day. I'm like, man, thanks for being so pretty, because it makes life really fun. And he is every bit as precious to me as Abba is. He is the personification of the husband I met in God.
Who are your favorite resources, just for learning and things like that?
For me, it's very simple, and it's 119 for a couple of different reasons. They use a lot of scripture and not necessarily a great deal of commentary, though they can, get long in their preaching sometimes. And with so many children and homeschooling so many different ages, things have to make sense to me quickly, and I need to be able to find them in the Word. If I can't understand them and I can't find scripture, I don't mind listening to someone's commentary on something, but if they're not backing it with a Bible and I can find it on my own, I don't go any further, because I have this much free time, in the course of a day. For me, I would say only 119 is where I go myself outside of the Bible.
I don't know that I have a favorite. Part of my experience in Christianity is I had a couple then that I really liked and kind of fed off of, and so but coming out of that, right? You know, like I said, when I found out about Sabbath, it was like, y'all have been lying to me, right?
All y'all.
And
all y'all.
Exactly. And I think right now would be Tim Hegg, and only because I'm starting to get a little more interested in Talmud.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was listening to Tim, and he just made some very interesting comments about our halakha and what that really means, and the oral Torah, and he was actually elucidating out of one of the Gospels, and one of the things that Yeshua had said, and he goes, go find it.
It's not there.
It's not
It's
there.
in the Talmud.
It's in the Talmud.
It was part of the oral Torah.
Yes, right.
Yes,
and
a lot of Yeshua's teachings came straight out of rabbinic teaching.
Exactly.
Yes, he was a rabbi.
Yeah.
He was a Pharisee, most likely.
Most likely, right.
And yes. Well, you two have made me very happy tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have no idea how much I have enjoyed myself in this conversation. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Walk Like a Hebrew. You can find links to the resources mentioned in this episode in the show notes on your podcast app or by visiting sheholdsforth.com. Please like our Facebook page at Walk Like a Hebrew and follow us on Instagram. And don't forget, share this podcast with your family and friends, subscribe to Walk Like a Hebrew on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a good review so more people can have the chance to hear these wonderful testimonies. As always, heartfelt thanks to Jack Lane for so many things, including the wonderful music. If you'd like a free CD of Jack's music, send an email to jacklane@earthlink.net. May Yehovah bless you. We'll catch you next time.